Welcome to the Work Inspired podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Sullivan, along with my co-host, Jerry DeCola today. We are interviewing Chris Happ with Virtuous AI. We're having a forward-looking conversation to discuss AI's role on creativity, adaptability, and the future of the workspace, exploring how smaller teams can harness AI to level the playing field. We'll also discuss balancing technology with human compassion and using information creatively to gain an edge. Work Inspired starts right now. Thank you so much for being here today, gentlemen. My co-host Jerry and Chris, we're so excited to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jerry, Kim. Great to be here. Great to see you guys.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, our very first question we ask everybody is, what is your professional story?
Professional story. Well, I've been an entrepreneurial soul, I guess, since birth. I remember my parents had let me save up for a baseball bat. I loved baseball as a kid. And I was going to bring the money. Somehow my dad and I got to talking about how much it cost. And he had made the comment that you couldn't offer him anything. I was like, wait, hold on here. There's a price on there, but you're telling me I can offer anything? Now, of course, that doesn't work in like a Toys R Us or whatever. But just the concept stuck with me that you can negotiate and you can kind of figure your way out. You don't have to follow the rules that way. So I would start doing things like negotiating kids' grades with the teacher. They maybe got a C. They thought they should have got a B. I would go charge them to level up grades.
How do you do that?
Well, yeah, there's an art to it. Generally, you're kind of packaging it up. You're trying to take in their side of the story, and you go to the teacher with a whole, kind of series of arguments, and you can just, if I'm going to start at an A, I can probably generally land at a B for them. I guess on a level, I thought I would go into law school just because I sort of liked the art of persuasion or sort of informal debating. I always just loved solving problems. So I wasn't that shocking that I ended up where I am in terms of entrepreneurial journey. My first job out of school, I got really into programming. So I worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it was in their management consulting group. And what they did is they would give prospective hires a logic test. And if you did really well on it, they would teach you how to program. And at that time, it was just the beginning of the internet. There was massive teams of people implementing software and implementing ERP systems and various sort of like cloud internet systems. So fell in love with technology and computers as part of that, work for some brilliant people. Went to work at a software company called Ariba, which was amazing as a kid to kind of work at a company where on paper, you were worth some crazy number back in the day, and then sort of like see how that whole bubble played out. But just learn from some of the smartest technical minds frankly, in the world. And then went off and said, I can do this on my own. I got to a point where I said, I've learned a lot, and I'm just going to go start building companies. So I built a company in supply chain where we were enabling the connectivity of buyers and sellers, so Fortune 500 procurement organizations trying to find sellers and build efficient supply chains. So I sold that to a French company, a public French company, and then I built a business in the space where Jerry and I met in the AI or artificial intelligence for commercial real estate and AP automation, and we had done a lot around ESG and energy efficiency. So the thesis was around how do you take all the data that a building generates and turn that into a more effectively run building. And so some of the underpinnings were taking utility bills and automating that whole process. So sold that business, got into a marketplace business where we built it to north of about $10 billion in gross merchandise volume flowing through this marketplace, and exited that. And now for the last year, I've been the CEO of Virtuous AI. We're the creator of the first BAO platform, which is business automation, intelligence, and outcomes. And I'm sure we can talk more about that as we go and what that is. But I've said a lot, so it's probably time to take a pause.
Well, let's go right into that, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about this company. Tell us about BAO.
BAO, yeah.
BAO.
So
yeah.
The thing I love about AI, it's just the creativity is amazing. And what it's offered small teams particularly, if harnessed, is an incredible opportunity. And so what do I mean by that? Historically, the Fortune 500 has the resources to do things. And I know this as an entrepreneur myself. I keep building and building and building. And then you hit this point that we call an execution gap, which is the difference of here's where I am, here's where I want to be. And generally, there's a resource hole in that gap. What do you do 5 years ago? You throw resources at it. Well, you don't have them, especially as a mid-market company. Enter AI, where now we have this amazing resource that, if used properly, can fill that gap. And what I think is amazing is that it creates a level playing field for these companies, and their ability to take advantage of it at a pace with which the Fortune 500 can't is really the double-edged sword here, in that the Fortune 500 can throw a lot of money at it and a lot of resource to figure out AI, but they can't move as quickly. Inherently, there's structures, and for good reason. But you now have these smaller companies who, if they can adopt this and think AI first, or think outcome first, and then focus this AI entirely with them on creating these outcomes, I personally think you'll have the Mag 7 in the Fortune 500 now, and 490 of who will make it 10 years from now in the Fortune 500 will be companies that are 5 and 10 people today that just start AI first and just move so much faster and just think that much differently. So that's what a Bayo platform does. It enables that. So what are my outcomes that I want to achieve? And how do I get the data in to be able to harness the signals that come out of that data and then move in terms of execution? So it's generally, how do I acquire customers better, faster, cheaper? How do I look at cost of goods sold and what it costs me to basically profitability? And then how do I keep customers, or how do I make sure that the customers I'm getting I can continue to build a relationship with? So really finding signals that lead to those outcomes.
Sounds like a perfect fit for where you started, right?
Yeah.
You like solving problems for people.
I do. I love it.
And so this enables like almost a blank slate of problems of, hey, tell me about yourself, Mr. Customer, and I'd love to learn where you want to go and how do we put these to get there. Can you tell us about a success story within that?
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool to watch these stories happen. Just look at some of the capabilities of when this is done right. So if I have, let's just take a marketplace. And in a marketplace, I have buyers and sellers. And generally, there's information that exists only in that ecosystem. We have this really powerful data signal, which is who's buying from whom and who's selling to the other. But you want to enrich that network, and you want to say, hey, you should be buying from this person, and you should be selling to this person, or maybe here's some products that you should be thinking about selling, because your customers are actually sending signals that is something that they want to do. So one of our customers, we took all of their data. They loaded into our Bayo platform all of their information. The system went out and automated data signals from every single retailer and then all of the sellers in the marketplace. And from that was able to then recommend better relationships based on, here's typically the price point, lookalike companies. So it was a really powerful example of where you have your own data, which gives really important signal, and then you go couple that with external data, just what they sell on their website, what the pricing is, what sales are happening, and you put that together, and then that drives future revenue and future sort of platform growth, because at the end of the day, the marketplace is happier because you're helping create this richer connectivity.
That's a great example of how AI was used to work with a customer and the source, right?
Yep.
How do you think people can also work within their workspace with AI? How do you think this, they all say it's an emerging trend, but we've all known AI is coming and it's here, right? And it's only going to grow, and we're at the infancy. So what do you kind of think of the future of how people can work with AI?
There's two versions. There's the business AI and there's consumer AI. So I think we're all getting used to having AI in our pocket, and it's getting better and better. If you look at things happening where the large AI providers, think OpenAI or X, are moving towards devices where that's just now part of your everyday life. And so it's going to help you as your sort of personal assistant. When I think about, I have young kids, I always say I'll call them out, Wesley and Teddy, 4 and 6. The entire written word is available now in their pocket. So the way we think about even education is different now because they can get access to this, and it's how you interact with that. But on a personal level, you have I want to say moral compass, but you have a compass that helps you detect BS or this answer's not quite right. So there's that piece that we're all learning how to interact with that we're going to have. And there's these devices are all going to have AI built in. And so we're going to be interacting that way. But from a business standpoint, the business has a set of mission statement, core values. And so it's really important, and that's where we come in as well, which is the business needs to have a language that has governance on it. So you're interacting at an individual level, and you've sort of got that governance built in, but the business needs that in a business AI layer. So I think it's really important that we're working with these devices. They reflect the moral compass of the business or the internal core values of the business. I think that's really important in terms of, as we work with machines, keeping human compassion and interactivity and human relationships. And really that comes down to what are your core values and do I trust you and those kind of things. And I think that needs to be blended in. So we're taking these machines and computers, and then we need to blend that into both our business and personal life. So that's what we're really trying to do is on the business AI level, do that. Whereas a consumer, you're kind of navigating that on your own into the devices and into the chair I sit in will have AI in it at some point, which is going to kind of work with me to be comfortable and understand, the things I'm doing and perhaps what I'm saying or anticipating needs. But you could imagine where every device is going to have it, and it's going to be interacting with me personally. I want that same thing for my business where there's some governance.
In some areas, there's AI to some people. It's fearful, right? They're afraid of it, and I think we need to show people that some things won't change. So what do you think won't change? How do we deal with these confusers? Yeah. How do we make sure that those people feel comfortable with AI, that there's not everything's going to change in the world?
Yeah. If I break down the essence of being a human and why we're at where we're at in the world pecking order in terms of animal, where we sit in the sort of food chain of animals, our ability to work together and communicate has been the reason why we evolved the way we did. I think it's innate to humans to want to work together and with each other, and we aren't maybe the strongest animal or I suppose you'd say we're the smartest animal. Our ability to work together is what separates us. So I think that's what we want at the end of the day. So amplifying that is a good thing. Technology that amplifies that is a good thing. You can argue about the merits of things like Facebook or these these social media and social connectivity, but I think that probably scratched an itch that's just natural to humans. I don't think that changes. I think we're not going to eliminate all jobs. Most CEOs I talk to, eliminating jobs is not the reason why they're implementing AI. It's, I want to make the team more efficient. I don't think people love doing monotonous jobs. If it can do that and let them focus on stuff that they really like, I think that's going to enable a better outcome. So I don't think it's meant, well, it certainly could. I don't think it's meant to replace people in that way. I think it's a way of creating, ideally, if done right, richer connections because you can move off tasks and let us focus more creatively. You're not going to outsmart AI. It's been trained on everything ever. So you're not going to beat it in a history contest. So let's put that aside and say who can interpret history more creatively? Well, that's something interesting. We can connect over that. You can be scared of it, and I understand that perspective. That's a reasonable perspective to have. I've watched people when they interact with it for the first time kind of get the aha moment or a bit of it where it's just disbelief that it can feel so lifelike and understand and back and forth. I was reading the number one use for ChatGPT now is personal therapy, where people just interact with it. It's non-judgmental. The responses are quite good. It's a lot, you can have this back and forth. It's actually quite human in that sense, and it's people are interacting with it. Now, you should know, I think now the government has them save all chat history, so I don't think therapists all have that. There's different regulations there, but it's interesting that we've landed on naturally making it our companion already.
Well, it's interesting too. So I began to use it with my business. Right?
Yeah.
Nowhere in any facility management class have they ever taught AI.
Yeah.
Anything that we ever. But in using the same product over and over again, it is amazing how it remembers things that I've said, things I've done. It knows the feel and the culture of the business that I'm trying to develop, and it pulls that back in. It remembers things that I don't remember about my own business. It does create a human part of it, right?
Yeah.
So it is interesting how there is that human connection. So, well, I don't put human in quotes, connection between what I'm doing and what it's been able to produce for me. You think over time, even I'm going to call people with silver hair.
Me, I'm just going away.
Are going to continue to be able to adapt.
The silver hair almost adapt to it more. And there's probably the younger cohort who's sort of started with it. And then there's people more in the middle where maybe they're more fearful of it because it's kind of like right at that level in the knowledge worker economy where it's like, oh, I'm a programmer. That's a really good programmer. That's sort of intimidating. For me, what's really important with our team, and I value this more than I do the skills on the resume, is creativity and desire to solve problems. Because we can teach it, and we've taught our system to write its own code. So by design, programming skills aren't as valuable to me as the ability to teach and interact with, we call our system Violet, VAI, Violet. So that's the ability to interact with Violet and teach her things. I guess we call her a her. I don't know why that is. But the ability to teach her things is the most important skill. And that's really what people need to adapt to is you have this tool, and do you fight it or do you work with it? We have a joke. Every new customer we come on, there's a person in that organization, and you would think it's the elder statesmen fighting it. They're pushing it. But there's usually someone in there that's resisting and looking to prove it wrong and looking to kind of show where the holes exist. But I really think the future is how do you find people who embrace that, hey, this thing's book smarter than me, but I need to take that knowledge and transfer it to my business and use that as an edge. The fear I guess you could have with AI is that it all goes into it gets crowdsourced into one massive intelligence model, and bigger companies are the only ones that can compete because they have more data and more money. So that's really, I think, important is that as people are learning to work with this, we're gonna create really interesting outcomes that are a mixture of machine and human.
You bring up a good point. So for 15 years, I've been teaching classes, and for facility management people, and a big part of people's success is their ability to critically think.
Yeah.
How do you think beyond just what you're doing? How is it going to impact someone down the road? And it's interesting to have a system do that with you, not for you, because sometimes it gives you something and you're like, no, that's so. Even though it's giving you an idea, I've still challenged it, not from a standpoint of are you right or wrong, but are you answering my question the way I want it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great point. We have customers all the time where you'll ask a question and it'll bring back an answer. We had one where they had asked about an event. What was sales during this event? And the system came back with the whole weekend, and they had wanted just the day of the event. Okay, it's an interpretation just like a person would do. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting how that back and forth, and how do you learn how to have this back and forth? We've sort of set AI up where, well, it's this all-knowing thing, and how doesn't it know what's in your brain? Well, it's like talking to a person. They don't always know, and it's about, does it have the context to understand what you're asking, and how do you teach it that, no, this is what I meant? So it starts to learn you as just like a friend knows you don't have to, what's that old, you see a friend you haven't seen in years and you can kind of rip on the same jokes that you had before and those kind of things.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, the conversation you guys just had about how do you trust AI, right? And how, and even for your perspective, how do you have people less working in JavaScript and maybe more setting the parameters and collaborate over what this needs to be able to solve the problem for someone else? So is it something that you feel that even the workspace, the physical shell of the building will change to adapt with the people that are in it that are co-using AI to be able to service their needs?
Yeah, and Jerry, your perspective would be great on this, just with you've seen the evolution of the workspace. Like, there's obviously an evolution of what's happening in the workspace anyway. We had COVID and we learned we could work remote and work different, and then we all learned that doesn't feel great. I like to be around people, and we're more creative when we're around people. There's physical components in terms of the hardware, just the physical makeup of how AI works and the compute, and so what chips need to be on data, and so that's going to play into how we touch down in offices so we have access to the compute and those kind of things we need. But underlying, I think how do you mix the ability to be creative and be where you need to be? I mean, I know for me, life has blended into, it's not a 9 to 5, so you need to be flexible just in a work environment where I have access to things at different hours than our standard, or there's probably more two working parent families where you want ability to take care of your kids and get to a doctor and do all the kind of things you need to do because you're working now, you're always connected. And yet, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's just sort of the way, at least for me, this is evolving, is that we now have devices and intelligence that's running all the time. And so how do we have a work environment that understands and reflects that?
From an AI standpoint, it's going to be very interesting because there's one of the biggest challenges for people who I've met over the years who run smart buildings, right? And one of the biggest challenge or the biggest complaints is that there are components that don't work well together, right? And they don't know how to communicate. Or company A has installed this, company B has installed this, company C has installed this, and it's they got there's too many players. Where I think if AI has the ability to say, okay, I don't care who A is, I don't care who B is, and who C is, but let me take all the data that they have on their systems, and let me start to bring together all that together and give you the information as to what's going right between the connections of A, B, C, and D. So I think some of that interconnection will become, I'm hoping it will become more seamless over time.
Yeah.
Because it is a challenge for many people that oftentimes there isn't connection, and that there's systems that are sold as smart buildings.
Yeah.
And they don't work together, because each group has its own agenda, its own mission, and they can still have their own agenda and mission.
Yeah.
Or there's a preference for company A to do this and a preference for company D to do this, which is fine.
Yeah.
But let me take that information and now let me layer onto it the weather. Let me layer on the number of people in the building, the location, the crime rate, the economy, the inflation. You start laying all that on top of it, and now you're going to have a different interaction with the building. So before you even walk in the door, well, we know it's going to be a light day, so chances are we don't have to make as many sandwiches.
Yeah.
So, I mean, something as simple as that might become part of the solution.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's almost like the governance layer, so I always found that interesting in the last kind of when we met, the disalignment, I guess, of incentives. You have someone who owns a building and it's an investment. So they have a viewpoint on how long they're going to hold it and what they're going to invest. Then you have people in it, all with different lease structures generally, who therefore have different incentives. And you have different cultures I always like it perfectly cold or perfect temperature. I'm not willing to bend, or all those things, or I don't ever want to show up and there's a missing sandwich. That's just part of it. And so you almost have this layer which is sort of exposing that, understanding that, and making that available, where you're understanding sort of the greater good component of it.
And then and modeling buildings before they even go up. So
Yeah,
even looking in and say, okay, if this is what you plan to do, these are going to be things that could be potential pitfalls that you want to take care of before construction begins.
Yeah.
Right? So let's start taking, and then you're able to address them, so you might have a better building design for that because of that.
Yeah, building for the natural evolution. This was a while ago, and they're probably doing this more, but I was in, I think, Nashville for a real estate event where they're talking about all the buildings they're building now there. They'll have parking garages built in, but they're all designed where that will eventually go away, and they'll become units, right, that become, as we eliminate cars or reduce the need, or we move more into autonomous vehicles, you just know. But so that's been designed into the space that's coming. And so how do buildings adapt that same way?
Right.
Just kind of letting AI help understand the use cases and what people are wanting.
Right, because that's one of the biggest challenges. Once it's built,
done.
you're locked.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's Chicago, right? We're
Yeah.
built.
Yeah.
So not a lot of availability. And how do we work with
Right.
these big old buildings that
Right.
were built many, many years ago?
Right.
But or some of these buildings that maybe no one's been able to change, maybe now we can, because there's some adaptability we're missing. We're not seeing the connections.
Yeah.
So smart buildings, besides, working on the whole building structure, what about smart spaces? How do we think AI will influence a space, whether it is going to be a business or a residence or a retail or whatever it happens to be?
What's unique about a building other than the obvious? Well, the address. So physically, you have access with a camera or multiple cameras to virtually what no one else does. So that data is yours as an owner of a building. So you start thinking about, it's really valuable. Obviously, AI craves data and information, and so those are signals that the building, just that being at that physical address, that no one else in the world can capture with that fidelity. And so what is the building sort of becoming, one, for its own use? Jerry mentioned, there's a lot of people in here, we should cool it off because it's going to get hotter, or there's nobody here today for whatever reason, so let's kind of shut some things down. If we view the building now as a data gathering mechanism that is informing other things, are you a net seller of data as part of it, not just the office space, and same thing with all the devices in here. Are they communicating preferences? And certainly I expect them to adapt to our needs in the environment and make it more comfortable, or as it senses people are moving around, it's going to respond to that. But all that information it's gathering about people, maybe less so the individual, but more just generally how people operate and what that does. Imagine you're in a meeting and it was a good meeting. Maybe you agreed on a deal, and so all the posture moves and all the things that happen, and so you'd sort of learn what does a good meeting look like and a bad meeting, and so what does that mean? Does the chairs start to adjust? What do you learn from that? It's less AI, maybe. It's more of all this data, and then I put it into a machine and ask it to go find patterns and trends in that.
One of the other things you had mentioned when we talked originally was that the space may have to change, not necessarily from the human perspective, but the amount of machines and things we will need within a space. Could you elaborate a little bit on that about, does there need to be a robotics area, right?
Yeah.
Little things like that I never even thought of.
Yeah, can you imagine? We're bringing our Android to work, and so it needs a little space and needs a space to charge. The power demands are going to be massive. Internet connectivity is going to just grow. So you have all of that, space needs. Where do I put that stuff? Where do I charge that stuff? Where do I get the compute needed? We're sort of moving. It's interesting how you move back and forth where the compute happens. Does it happen on a device, or the device is generally dumb and it happens elsewhere and then it lands on the device? We're moving back now more to this device-driven, or where it can compute at the edge, they would say, or right in your pocket, so it's faster versus the internet. Well, hey, I'm going to teach AI all of this information about me and my company. I don't want that out in the world. Once I train someone how my company runs and how I think the edge that I have, I don't want that anywhere else. So I think there's going to be a move back to physical servers in spaces. One, to get the compute closer to people, but then two, because it's private. I don't want that running somewhere else. So we had all moved to the cloud, which was great and enabled a lot of productivity, but I think we'll move back some of the space. Maybe it replaces, like, we got rid of filing cabinets, right? And those will probably stay gone. But now we put back servers, which will change the whole, like the heat and the power demands of a building. I think we're kind of going through that evolution of where the technology is going to live and where it's going to be needed. And it'll be, we'll figure that out based on job functions and what people are doing and where they need more or less compute, more real time.
I think back of my lifetime, right? And back in the day, you used to pay for minutes on a cell phone. I now know that obviously we could probably call anyone in the world and it would not charge us a darn thing. But if you wanted to use the internet, that's where it's going.
Yeah.
Do you foresee a future where it is global, internet, online capabilities, and then, like you just said, the security of your data is what you keep with you versus the connectivity is something that is shared amongst all?
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective on it. So now you have a website and you want everyone to find out about you. Cloudflare, just as an example, is generally securing all or most, like 30% of websites. They're now giving the option to charge for a bot to come and look at your website. So before, Google would send out the bots and you'd go learn, and we all thought that was a service. We can get all this information. Now you have a blog post, and your blog post that was meant for people to find you is now training AI models or training other people's data. So now you have the right to say, hey, if they're going to come in, I'm going to charge for how many words they take or whatever they're taking. So to your point, what are we doing here? We can get to it for free or almost free, but the information there is now what you have to pay for. So we're sort of creating this creator. How you think is really important because that's going to teach models. I mean, we're now run out of data to teach them with, and we're having them create fake data, synthetic data to train the models, which just, to me, reinforces the biases in it already. And I don't mean bias from like demographics and that. I just mean if the model itself is creating fake data, it's going to create data that it looks like what it already has. And so what you're trying to get is more opinions and more diversity of thought into it so it gets smarter. And so to your point, like, what do you have? You have your thoughts and your data and your information, and that's really the real specialness that we're all after. And so, it's sort of open access, but who do you want to share your information with? Because once it's out there, and it's going to get used to train things. And so do you have a right to charge for it? Who do you want to see it? But again, once it's in a model, you can't sort of unsee it from that perspective.
There was an idea a few years ago that I heard about the fact that there might become a time when we're going to charge to not be included into situations, right? So right now you sign up for anything and you opt in automatically, right? How are you going to opt out? How are you going to always have that right to protect, right?
Yeah.
Still have access, but still be able to opt out when you feel comfortable. I don't know. I mean, when you complete anything and they'll say, well, we can make it easier by using this service. Well, those services always then say, well, by doing this, we can take over this calendar, this, and this for you. Like, well, I'm not giving you all that access.
Yeah.
No, I'll deal with the pain. I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
At this point in time. So opting out might become more advantageous.
Yeah.
That way.
Yeah. We're in a world where we buy companies not for the business necessarily. Yeah, it's a kicker, but the data. So if you can buy a business, a decent business, you don't really care about it, but you care about all the data that came from that business. That's how important data is. So I go back to with the buildings. How you have a advantage in that you're a data generator. You're a net. You're getting a lot of information. How do you think about harnessing that?
What do you think forward-thinking companies should be investing in for the future? Aside from signing up with you, of course.
Yeah, that's no brainer. How do you find the right people? How do you create a culture that embraces technology and then find people that are a fit at your level of comfort in that spectrum. Like I said, I value immensely just creativity and desire to solve problems and desire to understand and adapt. So I think culturally that's where I lean, and I think that's really, it's hard to find people. It's uncomfortable. You don't always have the answer, and you have to go figure it out, and it's the ability to teach yourself to learn. So how do you find people like that and invest in finding those kind of people? I think the technology will work if you have those kind of people, and you need less of them generally because they're intrigued by solving problems, and they move very quickly, and they're intense about solving it. In the future, that's where the company moves towards, is people that naturally work that way, because it used to be you could hoard information, or you were sort of good because you knew something somebody else didn't. That's not really the case anymore. Now it's how do you use information more creatively, or you find an edge that someone else didn't think of. It's not that they didn't have the information, they just didn't think of it that way. And so how do you use the compute power that we have to find an edge or think differently than someone else? It's just hard to find people like that. It's, I don't know, you could probably like trace it back to, does our school system encourage that? We could go on a whole separate discussion about like the future of higher ed, right? And is that really like producing the talent that we need in this like AI world? It's a whole nother conversation, but I think it's really interesting. It's like, how do you find those kind of people that embrace this? And you got to be really adaptive.
I feel like you found my next question.
Oh,
It was literally that. So as a high school student,
Yeah.
right, approaching college, trying to find a degree that isn't going to be eradicated by AI in some format, but wanting to develop and work with it, what would be a word of mentorship or wisdom you'd give them of a path forward that could really help them flourish in this new world?
yeah. All right. So what does college offer that goes away? Memorizing facts, not really that useful. It's nice to have some at the tip of have a general like understanding of the way the world works. But if I think back, the most useful things for me in college was learning to fail. Yeah, on your own, you're learning to fail. And then how are you successfully working with groups and swaying an audience in one, articulating your viewpoint, or being wrong, and then how do you handle that? And instead of saying you're right and let's do it your way. So that was learning how to be social in a more professional setting with a bigger group of people you didn't know or hadn't known your whole life. I think you need that, because I think that's a part of social growth that's really important. But the educational piece, in terms of, well, if I need to know a fact about this or that, that's changing. So personally, I would say go live in a city and get a job. And I think there will be this coming set of jobs for high school kids who are just curious and want to learn, and will figure things out and will learn on the job, but also learn to be, go live on their own. So if you look at just the economics of the investment in education and the debt that you come in versus like, I'm just going to go learn and figure it out. I just value, you can tell I value that skill set immensely. I'm much less interested in the resume other than it shows me grit and ability to, dust yourself off when you need to and go figure it out.
I agree. And well, it's interesting. Apparently my father was ahead of his time, because when I growing up, from the age of 10, I'd be working with him on different projects, and I'd say to him, well, how do I do that? You assign this project to me. How do you do it? And he'd say, figure it out.
Yeah.
And I did. And that's how you have to, no matter what industry, anytime, you have to be able to critically think and think, okay, well, I don't have the resources that I may need. Excuse me. How do I figure it out?
Yeah.
How can I do it? Right? Going back to the CEO for a second, I was listening to a radio station the other day, and they were talking about how talent is being poached, top talent, right? And how maybe these top talent people are being gobbled up, or maybe they're being groomed by some of the smaller companies.
Yeah.
How do you protect your
Ooh, that's a good
small
question.
people?
Yeah, you can see that Meta recruited OpenAI's top talent for hundreds of millions of dollars. These are like now professional athletes, rock stars. It would be hard for me to look someone in the eye who said, Chris, I'm going to 20x my salary. Should I do it? Well, that's a big number. You should think about that. If they value the culture and what we're trying to build, then it becomes a decision. If it's just a job, you should just take the money and just whoever's the highest. At some point you're a hired gun, or and that's fine. That might be some people's mentality. At our company, it's a smaller group of people. I don't think we'll ever grow massive in terms of headcount. That used to be a thing, right? How many got to 100 employees? I'm successful. Now I think it's more about if you get the right people, they're naturally going to want to stay because they're committed to what you're trying to achieve. For us, it's how do we give the mid-market this tool that was only once reserved for the very well-to-do. Certainly there's, if I'm honest, an equity component for them where they're going, hey, if we do this right, and I believe in this and I really enjoy this, then there will be a payday. But there's going to be plenty of people, I think, that are just lured by the money. And again, if I'm at a certain point in life, then that's compelling, and I get it.
What is a resource that has been valuable to you in your career that you'd recommend to others?
Mentors, really, this is oversaid.
It can't be said enough.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, how if you look back on why you were successful, somebody helped you. Somebody was willing to share information with you or provide insights to you that they didn't have to do. I mean, it took time out of their life or day, or building a network of people that will give you candid feedback, I think both positive and negative, and help you along when you need it is probably the most critical thing. Reading's, I think, important. We talk about the education system, but I think books, I like a lot of history and just sort of reading and understanding, and yeah, you can get a lot of that with AI. You can get summaries of it, and maybe that's the equivalent, but critical thinking, understanding the way things were. So I think books are really important. It makes your mind think in different ways.
Are you a paper book, a Kindle, or an audiobook person?
I like to read.
The good old paper book, yeah?
Yeah, I'll do podcasts though, running, but I travel a lot, so on the plane I like to have something I can read.
I love it.
Yeah.
What is something that you're excited about in the next 12 months?
Next 12 months. Well, we've launched our Bayo platform that went live in July.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So massive response to it. So I'm super excited just from a business perspective it's mostly about getting customers. I want to share my excitement with AI with them and seeing their aha moment. I had mine where literally I just couldn't unsee what I had just seen. I was like, this.
What was it?
This is amazing. It was one of our developers basically builds our entire application, was teaching the system to build its own code. And he sent me this raw video where he had to do it, and it had fixed one of his errors itself. Oh. And you could tell he was kind of like showing me this video, and he just recorded a demo of it, and it had fixed it. And he was like, wait, what? And he had just like built this AI code that was writing itself that had fixed itself, and he didn't expect it. And it was just like, wow, this is amazing. If we do this right and we really teach this, this is incredible what this is going to do. And you start thinking about, okay, so I don't need of all these systems. What are they? They're just a web user interface to a database. So I have a system for, in our company, we're not a massive company. There's probably 20 systems we use. So all I'm doing is I'm paying to store data over there and then put it together and make sense of it. Kind of your point, Jerry, about like this office does this and this one does that. Well, they're not working together. So then you say, well, I don't need to write code anymore to pull it out of these silos. I can put it all together just by telling the system it's learned how to write code. So we can just run our entire business from this one system. And then we get the power because the data's together, and now it can predict it. And so when you just kind of follow that chain of thought through, you're like, I'm building this amazing platform that's just going to run my entire business. And it's learning everything I do. When I tell it something, it learns. When I tell it I don't like the answer, it's learning. I can automate things. So it was the just the aha moment when I started to kind of play that through. And then when I enjoy when other people get it, and you're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be fun.
What advice would you have for future leaders?
Future leaders, not about the size of the team. I think it's again, let's go back to, let's focus on the outcome and how do we use these tools, and most importantly, how do you challenge yourself and ask yourself, how do I keep adapting? Because this is changing so fast. Literally daily, something new comes out. And so how do you stay generally on top of that and create business value, knowing that there's areas you're just not going to win? And so what is your focal point? That's what we're craving here, is uniqueness, humanness. That's what people are going to pay for. And so as a business owner or leader, how do you own and embrace your different and sort of get really good at that and be amazing at that, and as opposed to the sort of vanilla solution, that boring layer. But it's hard to do, because I think it's hard to really ask yourself, like, what customers don't I want? Where do I want to be great? Where am I okay just sort of like letting someone else do that?
Another question about you personally. You have 2 young daughters.
Yes.
What do they ask Alexa or Google the most?
Oh, it's so good. We were at her cousin's house, and one of my daughters has a stuffy called Lammy. So they ask, Alexa, who's Lammy? And Alexa didn't know. And yeah, I know.
No.
So it was quite a thing. It was hilarious.
Well, I'm sure Alexa's going to learn now.
Yeah.
And have an answer soon with AI.
She will. And I've actually been amazed how good they'll get on and play on Amazon and just like build a shopping cart and tell it, I want, I don't know, a Hello Kitty umbrella with 2 ears that's for this size, this whole long description. And I'm amazed how good it is at pulling this stuff out. But no, yeah, it's amazing to see how fast they're picking up.
Yeah, they'll give you the future ideas for all these
Oh,
companies that will
Why
wow
don't you
us
just
all.
do this, Dad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Chris and Jerry, for being on the show today. We
Yeah.
very much appreciate you being here, and this was a great conversation. And thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to rate our show. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Work Inspired podcast so that you don't miss any of the incredible guests we have planned for upcoming episodes. We'll continue to find the best and brightest minds in business so that you can learn, grow, and succeed, and so that we can all work inspired. Work Inspired is brought to you by BOS, a leader in commercial working environments and a Hayworth best-in-class dealership. Experience our 360 approach and discover the team, tools, and techniques required to navigate the complexity of your next workspace at BOS.com. If you have ideas, feedback, or would like to be featured on our show, please email podcast@BOS.com. Thank you for listening. This has been a Workspace digital production. If you're interested in launching a podcast at your organization, please email info@workspace.digital for a free consultation.